This is Land of Havilah, 2 Samuel 4. Abner was in the process of handing the kingdom over to David, but Joab killed him. Now coming up, word of Abner's death is coming back to Saul's son Ishbosheth in Mahanaim. You'd think Ishbosheth would be happy about it, but he's completely lost without Abner. Verse 1. When Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands became feeble, and all the Israelites were troubled. Comment. Ishbosheth already knew that Abner was going to hand the kingdom over to David, but now he knows for sure that Abner won't be around to protect him in any way. The Hebrew says his hands became feeble, which means that with Abner gone, he has no power to do anything. He's discouraged and disheartened. And the Israelites in general were troubled about Abner, or it has been translated they were disturbed and afraid. Abner's been one of the pillars of the nation, the most powerful stabilizing force, and to think he was murdered in David's capital is just quite disturbing all around. Now coming up with regard to Saul's son Ishbosheth, there are some murderers under his nose as well. Verse 2. Saul's son had two men who were captains of raiding bands. The name of one was Baanah, and the name of the other Rechab, the sons of Ramon the Beerothite of the children of Benjamin. Comment. Baanah and Rechab were Benjamite brothers who worked for Ishbosheth. Specifically, they were from the town of Beeroth in Benjamin. They were captains of raiding bands. No doubt they targeted foreigners like David's raiding bands. Now coming up with regard to their hometown of Beeroth, still in verse 2. For Beeroth also is considered a part of Benjamin, and the Beerothites fled to Gittaim and have lived as foreigners there until today. Comment. The Beerothites fled to Gittaim and now live there as foreigners, it says. Which Beerothites fled, it doesn't say, whether it was some of them or all of them, and why they fled, it doesn't say. They fled to Gittaim, which we don't know anything about other than it being some foreign location. But coming up, we get a clue. Perhaps most or all of the population fled because of what their homeboys did, Ishbosheth's raiders Baanah and Rechab, and the residents were afraid of retribution on the whole town, retribution either from the house of Saul or the house of David. An Israelite's place of origin was important because back in the day of Joshua, they assigned the promised land, quote, according to their families, end quote. That term being repeated 32 times in Joshua with regard to assignment of the land by family. And by law, the land was handed down generation to generation in the family, and even if the land was sold outside the family, it was supposed to come back to the family every 50 years in the year of Jubilee, Leviticus 25:10. So to be a Beerothite or a Bethlehemite, for example, that was a description not only of one's place of origin, but also of one's family ties and closest loyalties. So the people of Beeroth probably had to flee because of what their young relatives Baanah and Rechab did coming up. But first, some random information in verse 4. Now Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who was lame in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news came about Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel, and his nurse picked him up and fled. As she hurried to flee, he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. Comment. Jonathan was David's beloved friend. He had a lame son named Mephibosheth, not to be confused with his uncle, King Ishbosheth. Mephibosheth's feet were fine until the Battle of Jezreel when Israel was defeated. When news arrived that Israel was beaten and that King Saul and 3 of his sons were killed, including Jonathan, then naturally there was a power vacuum, and it was prime time for someone to come in, whether it be Philistines or Israelites, to come into the capital city and clean out the royal family to prevent any of them from assuming power. So young Mephibosheth suffered permanent injuries to his feet in the frenzy to evacuate the capital and go into hiding. Now coming up back to the Beerothite raiders, Rechab and Baanah. Verse 5. The sons of Ramon the Beerothite, Rechab and Baanah, went and came at about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth as he took his rest at noon. They came there into the middle of the house as though they would have fetched wheat, and they struck him in the body, and Rechab and Baanah his brother escaped. Comment. Rechab and Baanah struck Ishbosheth in the body, or it has been translated stomach or belly. Now some details of the attack, verse 7. Now when they came into the house, as he lay on his bed in his bedroom, they struck him, killed him, beheaded him, and took his head and went by the way of the Arabah all night. Comment, it was an inside job. They killed Ishbosheth on his bed. Verse 8. They brought the head of Ishbosheth to David to Hebron and said to the king, Behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. Yahweh has avenged my lord the king today of Saul and of his offspring. Comment, they claim they did it in the name of Yahweh, and they think David will be happy about it. They brought the head to David, thinking they'll be rewarded. Verse 9. David answered Rechab and Baanah, his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said to them, As Yahweh lives, who has redeemed my soul out of all adversity, when someone told me, Behold, Saul is dead, thinking that he brought good news, I seized him and killed him in Ziklag, which was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more when wicked men have slain a righteous person in his own house, on his bed, should I not now require his blood from your hand and rid the earth of you? Comment, David killed the Amalekite who finished off Saul. Saul was already mortally wounded, and the Amalekite only finished him off, and only because Saul asked him. So if David killed that Amalekite, he'll surely kill Rechab and Baanah for a completely treacherous assassination of a healthy man. Verse 12. David commanded his young men, and they killed them, cut off their hands and their feet, and hanged them up beside the pool in Hebron. Comment, David had them killed, then mutilated, then he hanged what was left of their bodies beside the pool in Hebron, which was a very public place, which was a testimony to the public that he did not approve of the assassination by a long shot. So when word of this punishment got back to their hometown in Benjamin, this is probably when the townspeople fled. Rechab and Baanah expected a reward. They didn't realize they were bringing Ishbosheth's head to a righteous man. In certain times and places, righteousness can be so rare in positions of leadership that we're surprised to ever see an example of it. May our times be different. May we see many, many examples of righteousness in our leaders. Amen. Still in verse 12. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in Abner's grave in Hebron. Comment, David treated Ishbosheth's head with respect. With Ishbosheth and Abner gone, there's once again a power vacuum in 11 of the tribes of Israel. Abner and Ishbosheth were murdered, but God will bring good from evil. 2 Samuel 5 is next at landofhavilah.net, 2 Samuel 5. This is the map of 2 Samuel 4. Rechab and Baanah were from Beeroth of Benjamin, exact location unknown. They killed Mephibosheth in Mahanaim at noon, then took his head all the rest of the day and night through the Arabah, which is the valley of the Jordan River and Dead Sea, and they eventually came to David in Hebron, about 57 miles as the crow flies between the two cities. 2 Samuel 5 is next.